Go.
Hello, welcome to the first of the new FPL BlackBox series. You might have noticed it's had a bit of an upgrade. We just need some good content, Mark, now.
We do. Did we cock up the start there? Did they? I think I said go, and I think it came out. Yeah, we tried to practice that, but it was inevitable. We're going to balls that up, weren't we?
All the gear, no idea. That's the kind of what we're rocking with.
It's very flash, all this, isn't it? It's very flash. But now we've got to bring the product, and that's going to be the difficult part because all we've thought about in the last couple of weeks is getting the technical stuff right.
Yeah, I haven't done enough prep for this, but we'll wing it. It'll be all right.
Yeah, and the thing is, I foolishly volunteered to do all the techie stuff, not realising just how difficult it was.
Yeah.
Full credit. Full credit to all the streamers.
This is FPL BlackBox. So for anyone, I mean, just to give a bit of a background, I started doing these a couple of years ago when I had a really, really rubbish season, and actually helped turn things around. And I guess, Mark, you're hoping it does the same?
Exactly. 177k in the world last year, my second worst season ever. Pretty dismal. I don't really know how it happened. I mean, there's a couple of reasons, but I reckon that stand out. But this is all about me looking at those mistakes and trying to learn from it. And I think that it's really trendy at the moment. Like psychology in FBL, there seems to be a lot of it about on Twitter at the moment.
FBL Raptor in the chat.
Yeah, absolutely. And he's done a few threads recently. I listened to FBL General today and his 59th minute podcast, which was excellent, by the way. Have a listen to that. He was psychology running through that. I think Raptor's going to be at home playing psychology bingo with us. He's going to be spotting the different biases that we mentioned, ticking them off as we go through. But it is about that. It's trying to basically look back at how you're playing, look back at last season, which I've really enjoyed doing, really analyse that and look at what you did right and wrong. But then as the season progresses, try and take the lessons from that and apply them and improve as you go. I mean, that's basically what I'm hoping to get from it. And I'm hoping you, when I start making mistakes, can correct me.
Yeah, I mean, it's good to, that's what I found was kind of documenting them in some way, gave you something to kind of fall back on and remember a bit more. Because every season you end up making the same mistakes over and over again. You vow you're never going to bring in that injury-prone prey. You vow you're never going to, bring in the rotation risk. But then something happens and you forget, the mistakes you've made, and you just focus on doing what you think is right at the time. Whereas I think when I had my good season a few years ago, I was going on the scout. I think it was my first year on the Scoutcast, and I was my first proper year, and I was determined to follow through on whatever I said on the Scoutcast. So I was saying my things on the Tuesday, and then I wasn't, changing my mind. And most of the time that worked. Whereas when I start making like these last minute decisions, you lose all the kind of knowledge that you've built up about what's a mistake and what isn't. And it's a heart over head thing, isn't it? You follow your heart too much, probably.
Yeah,
like morning decisions.
It's funny because I obviously was in the spotlight a lot, doing a lot of advice on Facebook Live and on the TV show when I did the Premier League stuff. And I actually had a really good, amazing season the first time and an okay one straight after that. But it was weird because I listened to FBL General just after that he had a really bad season. And he said when he started doing his Patreon stuff, when he started doing FBL full time, he struggled, and that's why he had a bad season. The opposite was true for me. Like the more I was actually sunk into it, the more I was fixated on it and obsessed on it, and having to check what advice I was giving, because I had to make sure that I was going on social and recommending the right players and so on. And I managed to take that information and basically by the time I took my decisions, they were often good ones. But I found last season, of course, when I'm doing far less, I'm detached from it. I'm not doing FBL full time. It's not on my mind all the time. Suddenly I have a bad season. So my inkling is that I need to actually give it more attention and overthink things a little bit more. Maybe overthinking is the wrong phrase for it, but certainly go back to being a bit more obsessive, if you like.
I think it can go both ways when you're in the scene a bit, because I've found the last couple of seasons I've kind of tried to be a bit too clever with things, just to kind of, because you kind of think at least I've got something to talk about if it goes wrong, or you end up talking about a player or something, and you end up kind of convincing yourself, and then you've kind of got to stick with it because people are looking to you to advise them. You think, well, I can't advise getting Ceballos in and then not get him in myself.
Yeah, you try and be a crowd pleaser, try and go for a Hollywood transfer.
That's the issue. Yeah, but just start to say, first of all, awesome to have you back. Like doing this. I mean, just for anyone that's wondering how the hell I ended up with Mark on FPL BlackBox, he sent me an email completely out of the blue a few weeks ago asking me if I wanted to do something with him. So, hey, cherry picked, right?
Well, what it was, I thought to myself, like, I need to get back into doing something because I missed it so much last season, like not being in a community, not having something to do every week to do with FPL, some content of some kind. And I thought, well, I could do my own little channel, I guess. But then I started looking for names, and everything's gone. I mean, like, it's the FPL, all the foods are gone. FPL this, FPL that, it's all gone. All the jobs are gone. I mean, like, is there an FPL gynecologist? I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, it's just basically everything out there gone. And I just thought, where do I start?
FPL Fraser is the one that got you, wasn't it?
Is there an FPL Colombo as well? My favourite TV shows. So, I mean, these days, if you're starting up on FPL, it's pretty difficult. Right? Back in the day when I started Scout, I mean, it was a good name, but I could have picked anything, to be honest. Nowadays, it's very, very difficult. There's so much content out there. So it's actually quite intimidating to come back because so many people are doing so much great stuff.
Yeah.
A lot of it for free as well. Podcasts, I mean, Granville and I started probably the first or maybe the second FPL podcast. Now there's 15, 20 of these, and so many good ones as well. So I'm pleased to be back, and I'm really excited to be doing something again. But at the same time, it's like I'm a bit rusty, and also I'm a bit intimidated by the amount of quality guys and girls there are out there in the community. It's amazing.
Yeah, and pressure's on us to deliver when we're just like, I don't know what we've got. We haven't done enough. This is it. We put all the effort into the technical side. We're screwed.
We'll be fine. It'll start coming back to us. Don't worry about it. And the season's going to start soon, and we'll have plenty to talk about then because we're going to make, I'm sure, quite a few mistakes as we go, aren't we?
Well, yeah. I mean, we always do. I mean, my last two. We're going to talk about our seasons in a minute, but oh god, I mean, the trick with FPL, I've always said, is if you make more right decisions than you make wrong decisions, you have a good season. But oh my god, I've made so many bad decisions. And you know, at least with something like this, you can look back on. I think the thing that I think some people struggle with this kind of idea is that they say it's easy to look back with hindsight. Like when you bring in a player, you Ceballos again. I've probably mentioned him a bit later as well. You bring him in, he doesn't get you any points, and then you say, "Oh, that was a bad decision. He didn't get any points." And you're looking at. I think that's the idea. I think this is why it works better with two people. This kind of idea was because it's hard to know when it's hindsight, when it was an okay decision but it just didn't deliver, or when it's legitimately just a bad decision. I think you need to acknowledge it and not do it again.
Yeah, and that's the difficulty though, is like separating a bad decision from bad luck, because you can make the right call and get a bad score in a game week and convince yourself that you perhaps made an error, but actually you probably haven't. You've probably gone with the right call all along. It's just the output is not what you wanted. But there's so much variance, there's so much kind of randomness in FPL. VAR, like last season with VAR, it made it even worse, didn't it? It was random before, but now it's not only hitting the post you got to worry about. It's like is your left finger offside as well. It's just so difficult. So
like something like that Mane call went off injured after
you have to remind me.
Yeah. Oh, did you have him?
Yeah, I went Mane over. So maybe I was being clever there. Maybe I was overthinking. Maybe I just gone for Salah. I mean, I'm a Salah zealot, right? Salah zealot. So I always normally would go with him, but I just felt that.
What can you do? Like he goes off injured after 20 minutes or whatever it was of that game. Like it's just. I think injuries and red cards, unless it's Mitrovic, I think you're pretty unlucky. But yeah, I mean, I think between us, we've got some good examples of actually quite bad decisions that we've got to try and not do.
Yeah, we're going to look at those, and as we go, we're going to bring in some psychological elements that we talked about. Obviously, different types of bias and stuff like that. But and we talked briefly there about the output, and I think what we're trying to learn from this is it's not about the points at the end of the game week. It's about the process you went through to make your decisions and whether you're happy with that. I listened to FBL General before I came on in his podcast, and he's going through exactly the same process. He had a really bad season a couple of seasons ago, and he's learned from that. And he said himself that he thinks he knows how to manage an FBL team. What does he know how to manage himself? And that's very similar to how I feel about it at the moment. I've had some really good seasons, but I've had some really bad ones. So there's something I'm doing wrong in some seasons, and I need to find out what it is. So I'm here to do that, and you're going to help me.
I love how deep that is. He can analyze his FPL. Or was it he can analyze his FPL decisions, but can he analyze himself?
Well, I'll tell you what, General gets very deep, and he goes on. He takes it really seriously in terms of he's doing a match of the day challenge, and he wants to do it all season. By the sounds of it, he said he did it on game week 38. He says he's going to not look at scores. He's going to put his phone away, not be anywhere near TV, go out and enjoy himself. I'd like to do that.
Power.
That is. But he feels that that's the way he wants to play his season. He wants to shut off the noise. And, you know, it's really interesting that he's trying that. We're going to be trying some different things. I certainly wouldn't go there. Would you try
that? I do it on the odd times. So say like I'm out somewhere and I'm with the missus and we're out, and you know I know she probably doesn't want me checking the scores all the time. Then I might try and do it for like 1 week, but to do it on a whole season, maybe it gets easier. Like maybe once you've done it for like the first like 3 or 4 weeks, then it doesn't really bother you anymore. But it would drive me insane.
Yeah,
and like texts and stuff coming through. That's the thing. Like so many people we know talk football, and you have to completely shut off. It's not just not checking live scores or Sky Sports. It's like you can't even look at your phone for a whole day.
Yeah, I think my partner would suss it as well. She'd think it was weird that I wasn't looking at my phone on a Saturday, and she'd go, "What's going on?" It'd be like
you probably look them up just to have something like over you. That's what Mum would do.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't begin to do that, so I'm not going to take it to the same extremes that FPL General is doing. But I am intrigued to see how he gets on with that kind of thing. The other thing he said, he's not going to click on any mini leagues and look at anyone else's teams that he's up against. I mean,
wow.
Again, I don't think
that's the first thing I do myself. as soon as the thing comes. Check Joe, Andy, you, all the mods and cons people, see what they've done.
But I can see the logic in it because I know. I mean, I do look at other people's teams, and it does affect me. I remember one season, Torres Magic was flying, and I looked at his team, and he was like 100 points ahead of me. I looked at his team and go, "That's the team I want," and he's got it, and I'm 100 points behind him, and it is demoralising when you see it.
Yeah.
So I can see what General's talking about there, but I think that's a step too far for me this season. I mean, it's going to be. I hope that I'll learn things this season, and I don't know if it's going to have an impact. But I hope next season I'll see a benefit in the season after that.
They're almost kind of like, well, I'd say they're more kind of mental health type things, aren't they? Rather than because I mean, once the deadline's gone, it doesn't really matter whether you look at the scores, don't look at the scores, whatever. But it affects your daily mood, I guess. So he's just choosing to push all that till the end of the day rather than spreading it out throughout. But yeah, I don't think that would help us too much with like decisions.
I think I'd burst as well for match of the day. I can't imagine. I mean, I want to try it once, and I will give it a go. You know, maybe we'll choose a game and we'll both try it for a laugh and see what happens. But I can't contemplate doing that yet. But yeah, it's fascinating. We've all got different methods we want to try. But I think at the stage in our our FPL careers, we've done 25 seasons now. Is it? We worked it out between us.
Yeah.
I mean, there's not much to learn in terms of how you run a team and how you use the chips and stuff like that. I mean, we are going to be going over that kind of stuff in the podcast. We're going to talk about transfers and captains, of course. We'll get the usual stuff. But I think what we're trying to do is just have a bit more kind of look at ourselves and why we're making decisions, why we've made decisions in the past, how we're coming up with our next decision, what's behind it. And hopefully you can come with us and enjoy the journey and learn a bit as we go as well.
And not just us as well. I mean, the Fantasy Scout Meet the Managers series, I think is so good because you're bringing in all the top managers. Joe's talking to them about why they do certain things and seeing the different styles of play, of how they play. Like, can you imagine people get sick of, definitely get sick of me, maybe not so much of you, but when we get like actual other Hall of Fame, top managers talking about looking, because I mean, everyone makes mistakes. I mean, if even the top managers, if they didn't make mistakes, they'd win every year, but they don't. Someone like General having a bad season and looking at what he did, someone like Jay when he, took out Kane for that massively elaborate hit.
He'll thank you for reminding him of that.
Yeah, sorry. still got to be one of my most like significant moments though was watching that all unfold. But like, those kind of things are interesting, aren't they? Because it shows, people get burned when they try and do things in certain ways and when they don't, and sort of adding them up and working out when it works and when it doesn't, I think can help you make decisions going forward.
Yeah, and the theory is all about turning those mistakes and making them more of a positive and giving their opportunities to learn and get better rather than things to beat yourself up about, because mentally the game can be really difficult anyway because it's so random. So when you do have a bad game week, if you try and spin it and reframe it as something, okay, well, what did I do wrong? How can I get better by this experience? Then maybe we can all enjoy it that little bit more as well. But we'll see how it goes. It's a new approach, and I'm excited for it. And just to do something every week as well and get involved with the community.
Really cool.
I'm excited about it, and let's see what goes. I'm talking about the Hall of Famers Greyheads League. I mean, did you see the names in it? Did you see the names in that? I mean, unbelievable. So we're in that.
Why am I there? Because of this.
I'm worried it's going to be relegation battle for me. And I looked like Simon March has been relegated to the division below. He's won it, for God's sake. I mean, yeah. But
I mean, I ran Villaronca close last year, but
did you?
But lost it right at the end due to a bad free hit. That's my only excuse.
Yeah, you do. I mean, where did you come then? What was the finish?
Finished 17,000.
Yeah, see, that's not a bad season, is it?
No,
you'd say that was, would you? I mean,
no, it definitely wasn't. I mean, well, we're gonna talk in a minute. I mean, I really did rescue it from the jaws of defeat, I think. And the worst part is it's the second season in a row where I've had a really strong end to the season and finished kind of with a respectable round. Like the season before, I finished 64k, but that does not paint the picture of that season. Like I was 300,000-400,000 for probably 2/3 of the season before finally turning around at the end. I've got to stop having such bad starts, basically. Well,
I mean, the thing is as well, last season was terrible for me, but I never went lower than 1.1 million. That was my lowest ranked position. So it never got like, oh, I'm quitting FPL level, like 3-4 million in the world where I would be demoralised. I mean, I've been there before in the early game weeks, but I think it was game week 16 when I hit the lowest point, which was 1.1 million. And it never got worse than that, but it never got much better either. You know, I really struggled. And we're going to look in this week and next week, we're going to look at the reasons behind that. This week, I'm going to look at my transfers, which were absolutely shocking. You've seen a glimpse of some of the names.
Seen a glimpse, yeah. There's someone else.
You can't wait to get stuck in, can you? On those?
I can't. No, I'm going to try not to.
And then next week I'm going to talk more about Sterling and De Bruyne and the captains, because obviously we'll be debating the captaincy for game week 1 next week.
Yeah,
so
I think this one's more of a kind of reflective one. Next week we've got a bit more information, putting some more signings, that kind of thing. So. We've got our teams, our kind of first draft teams that we show at the end.
We'll reveal those. They are going to change a lot, though, aren't they?
And they're really different, which is good.
They are.
Mine and yours. A couple of the same players as you'd expect, but most,
How much have you tinkered? Because I was thinking, how sometimes you make a transfer and then when someone does really well, you go on Twitter. Well, I don't, but I'm sure other people do go on Twitter. Oh, Granville used to do this. I almost had that player.
Yeah.
I had that player. The thing is, the start of the season, I think I've had more or less there's probably 40, 50 players you consider. I've probably had all of them in my lineup at one. So basically, I don't want to be seeing people on Twitter going, "Oh, I had Ings in my team. If only I'd have taken him." Of course you did, because basically you've tried everybody in your team. Yeah. And that's how it's been. I'm dreaming about my team. I'm changing it at 3 a.m. It's pretty nightmarish at the moment.
Do you know? I'm actually the complete opposite of that this year. Since the fixtures came out, I'm more debating the formations rather than the kind of. I feel like I've got my kind of core players that I want, and it's the kind of the fringe players that I'm swapping around.
I'll be the judge of that. We'll see when we get to it.
I don't know. I haven't made any changes in the last week at all. I sent you a message. I think a week ago saying, "How's your team coming on?" And you said, "Oh, terrible," and I haven't made any changes.
You haven't made a change for a week.
For a week, no, I'm happy. I'm happy. You're going to tear it apart.
I've seen your team, so I'm doubly surprised. No, I mean, fair play to you. I'm going too far. I think I'm changing at every opportunity, and the thing is, there's so much content. I'm listening to podcasts all the time. I was listening to it's Correspondence Week on Planet FPL. Shout out to James and Suju, doing an amazing job on that. They're doing 20 podcasts this week, and it's ridiculous. And I've been listening to those, and every time I listen to one, I'm making another change. And that's the thing. There's so much out there. You can do that. You know, there's so much to. I mean, there's friendlies at the weekend. We're going to change our lineups after that, surely.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, Messi. You know, I don't think the Messi thing's going to happen, but
I don't want to talk about Messi.
we might have to in a week.
He's going to ruin it. I mean, we'd love to see him in the Premier League, and yeah, okay, fine. Not that we can go to grounds and watch him, but do you not think he's going to ruin FPL?
Oh yeah, I mean definitely. He's going to be owned by everyone. He's going to be captain every week. I mean,
Yeah.
it strikes me as the kind of thing that I'm going to be too clever with and not get him in, and then he's just going to go absolutely berserk. I'm going to finish like 2 million. There you go, BlackBox next season. That's my prediction.
I mean, everyone who does a captain article might as well give that up.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, I'd like him to come in and prove and not break things, as in to be on a par with Sterling or De Bruyne or something like that. And that's the other thing. How would he affect De Bruyne and Sterling? You know, will one go up? Will one go down if Messi's there? But it's not going to happen anyway.
I don't think it's going to happen.
No,
it's just another excuse for him to try and get a bit more money out of Barcelona.
And we saw today that there's a chance he can stay. Let's look at your history then, because we're starting looking at your team. Yeah. Let's bring that up. So you underlined, was that your lowest rank of the season there?
That's my lowest rank of the season, yeah.
2,002,036,315 in the world. Okay.
And I think I think it's the lowest I've been in the last 8 years.
Is it?
I think so. I can't, well, I mean, you know, not including like game weeks 1 and 2 or whatever, but be game week 11, 2 million, I can never remember that anywhere near that happening for. Maybe like 1 million or, you know, around 1 million, but 2 million, that was really low. I mean, the reason why I wanted to put this up, I mean, this isn't the whole season. Obviously, after game week, well, you can see all my green arrows at the bottom. It's starting to get a lot better.
Yeah, I noticed those. I don't want to talk about those though, do we?
Yeah, well, that's it. I thought I'd just leave the rest. But I mean, that mainly came to making some good transfers. So I bought in Grealish, I bought in Ings. I started getting my captains right. You know, it's all simple stuff. You know, I made good transfers and I captained scoring players like this. We all know what happens when you do that. But what I want to focus on a bit, and I'm not going to talk too much about mine because I think it'd be interesting to hear more about yours. And I've already done a video on this, which is on the channel. So if people want to look back, they can hear me talk a bit more detail about this. But there's 3 things I want to mention. And I said it earlier, if I'm going to have a better season, I need to sort out my first sort of 10 or 11 weeks, because I can't keep spending the second half of the season chasing the points that I've lost. And the mistakes I made early on were just so basic when you think about it. I mean, the first one was, I mean, before the season even started, I managed to lose myself like 30 points. And that was, I had a team set up like I have now. I was really happy with it. Went on the Scoutcast. I did a team reveal on the Scoutcast. I went on the FPL show, and what was I drumming in every single time? People need to be getting De Bruyne in. 9.5 million, 200 point season incoming. Fit, looks great. Get him in. And then, sorry to bring Jay up again, I did a J. I thought, oh, actually, I could spread those points.
You can't say I did a. You're making it a thing. You're making it a thing. That's not unfair. That's unfair to you.
Sorry, Jay.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't take a -8, so it's not actually a J.
Yeah.
But I decided to spread the points out. So I took De Bruyne out. I bought in Sigurdsson. I got in like. I know.
Sigurdsson, is he a thing anymore? I mean,
Sigurdsson, he was. I don't even know what I did with the money, but whatever I did with the money was awful. And on the first week, I was 30 points down on the other team that I had. And so then, you know, that's kind of one thing. But then what that puts in your mind is it makes you stubborn. And it makes me think, I'm not going to get De Bruyne in now. Screw him. I'm going to ride without him. I've gone without him game week 1. I've got a bye-bye now. And I went like 7 weeks without him. And he was just every week just delivering points. I took a -8 in that time to bring in Ceballos and didn't get De Bruyne. Like, you know what I mean? I was so stubborn about.
What did you see in Ceballos?
I know. Well, what I thought was he'd been signed, you know, come from Real Madrid, good pedigree. They just lost Ramsey. Ozil was sort of out of the team. And I thought he's either going to come in the team, he's going to be the new Ramsey or the new Ozil.
Right.
That was my thinking. It turns out he wasn't either.
But you based that on 1 week, though, did you?
Well, I didn't base it on any weeks. I based it on nothing. I based it on just general perception of you know, I've read a load of stuff about him. I watched some videos and stuff. But I mean, I'm not holding that down as a really key. I mean, he was 5.5 million. You know, the points, he got 2 or 3 points every week, but it's not like the player I didn't get in got loads. I don't think that was like a serious part of why I did so bad. I think the and I think you're going to talk about as well, not getting De Bruyne in because I was stubborn about not starting with him was the main thing. The second thing was Lundstrom. I didn't own
Oh
Lundstrom.
God, yeah. I remember listening to you and Luke talked about this.
My God, I just didn't get him in. I was just adamant that he was going to lose his place. I had O'Connell because I wanted the security of starts, and I should have reacted quicker. I should have, I think the year before we had Wan-Bissaka, 4 million in everyone's team, scoring loads of points. I think people worry so much about what premium players to get. They forget just how important these kind of budget defenders are. And when you've got someone playing like a 4 million defender playing for like a really defensively solid Palace team who's getting bonus as well, 4 million defender getting 9 points every week, you play him and you just don't worry about it. We got someone like Lundstrom, we got 21 points 1 week, and I didn't have him. He was like 60% owned.
But he was an outlier because of his position, though, wasn't he?
Yeah. But they're the kind of things that you need. We've played this game for ages. We should know when there is an out of position 4 million defender. God, even saying it now hurts.
We're never going to see the like of Luke again.
No, I don't think we will. I mean, we're not going to get it from Ferguson or Mitchell.
Did you actually get him in at any time? Did you get him in late in the season?
I got him in after January.
And you paid what, 5 million for him or something?
Yeah.
Was that because I'm exactly the same. I try and convince myself, and this is, I mean, I can see Raptor at home on his bingo card now. This is me doing the same. I will decide a decision, like I'll go for Sterling over De Bruyne, which is something I'm going to look at next week in detail. And then I'll convince myself that was the right decision, and ignore all the evidence. I'll just reframe it as it comes in, and stick to it. And sometimes it pays off. I mean, this is the trouble, because you hear like a lot of people talk about patience. Be patient with your decisions, and they will come. And we're talking about Sterling. He was top point scorer the season before. It's not like I was, wasn't backing a losing horse really. But De Bruyne just had a remarkable season, and Sterling, unfortunately, as we'll see next week, went through a period when I had him where it was just, it's very difficult to define it, but everything pointed to the fact he should have been scoring a lot of points and big scores, and he just didn't for me. He did eventually, but I missed them all. It was just a timing thing. But yeah, you just do that, don't you? You say something, I've got to stick to it now, and it's that stubbornness, and I've got to get over that, and I'm relying on you to spot it in me, and I'll do the same for you as well.
I think that's probably a big similarity between both of us. I mean, I remember, and I use this example quite a lot when I talk about this kind of thing. I remember a few years ago, I had a 50-50 call whether to bring in Baines or Coleman. It was when they were both doing quite well, but and Baines had free kicks and penalties. Coleman was just scoring from open play a lot, and I went for Baines. And I remember watching like the next game and looking at the stats, and Baines was just like non-existent. Like he just wasn't attacking at all. He was completely reliant on set plays. Coleman was playing as like a striker, and if I just done that move, Baines to Coleman, just accepted I'd made a mistake, done the move, even for a 4-point hit, I would have made like 40-50 points just off the back of that decision. So, and it would have been the same with O'Connell. If I just gone, okay, Lundstrom's here to stay, let's just bin off O'Connell. He's not going to match what Lundstrom's doing from out of position. He's cheaper and all this stuff. If I just done it, I would have been better off. So I'm going to try and be more aggressive with that kind of thing quite early on.
Yeah, I mean,
when it's so obvious that there's a problem with what I've got.
Should we have a look at the lessons that you've come up with? Because I mean, that's your first thing here about moving quickly and decisively at the start of the season. I mean, do you want to talk about some of these points here? I mean, you talk about getting in early with transfers, and that's quite a controversial thing, though, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, not even necessarily getting in early, but just being a bit more. I mean, the start of the season is so difficult because you've got players coming off the back of pre-season. You don't really know who's going to come into who's going to stay hitting form, and like we saw with Pookie last season, a couple of games looks amazing and then doesn't score for another 36 weeks or whatever it was. But I think that the cheap defenders are really important, especially when you don't really want to be making a lot of defensive transfers anyway throughout the season. So I'm going to try and limit the number I make. So having, if I could have like Ferguson and a 4 million Lundstrom, and then keep 3 premiums, or and not have to mess with that, it would be a lot better. Once you start having to mess around with your defense, it gets a lot harder. So yeah, my lessons here are, when I say move quickly, it's not necessarily like, Saturday night, make sure I grab a player, but it's every week. Just think, I need to be aggressive with how I play this. If I make a wrong decision, I want to correct it. I don't want to be stuck with the wrong player, because the first half of the season just disappears like that, and then you're 2 million in the world, and you regret all the stupid things you've done, and then you have to, and then you do start playing properly to try and make up for it. I want to start playing properly when I've got a chance of winning it, not bloody finishing not 2 million. So yeah, and I mean the other thing there is just trying to avoid the noise. You need to make a decision based on what you see and what you think and the stats and that kind of thing, rather than just doing kind of what everyone's doing. So yeah, I mean, adapting at the start, that's going to be my key. And I know some people hate this kind of thing around price points and and what does that mean and stuff. But having a kind of a structure to your team that makes it easier to jump around to different players. And actually, when you see my team in a minute, I've got 0.5 left in the bank so that I can better adapt.
I was going to ask you about that because I didn't know how much you had there, but yeah.
Yeah, so it's 0.5 in the bank. And one of the reasons for that is, if a player does well, you're forced into making that move straight away, because if you've got a 8.5 million player and they're 8.5, as soon as they go up in price, you've missed the boat. Whereas at least if you've got a little bit left in the bank, you can bide your time a little bit more, be a bit patient, be a bit more patient. So that just helps you adapt a bit to the early start.
Do you say you'd be aggressive with transfers? So do you mean, I mean, would you make early transfers? Because I mean, it's something. I mean, me and Joe used to have a few clashes on the Scoutcast about this, because I'm an advocate of early transfers to chase a bit of value. But there's a big school of thought that say team value doesn't matter. Make transfers when you have more data, and obviously I can see the logic in that. But when you talk about be aggressive, are you talking about that kind of thing? Would you make early transfers in the first part of the season to catch value?
No, I don't think so. I'm not. Value's important, obviously. It's, when you get to the second half of the season, you've got 106 million and someone else got 102. You're obviously going to fancy your chances. But no, when I'm talking about being aggressive, I mean more correcting mistakes. Not being stubborn, taking hits if they allow me to bring in players who I think are going to present great value for a prolonged period. I think that the Lundstrom thing is kind of what I have in mind here. I should have done, even if I had other fires to put out, I should have done O'Connell to Lundstrom early last season.
For a hit.
For a hit, whatever. And you can't look at it as like a -8. It's a 4-point hit. 4-point hit for O'Connell to Lundstrom would have paid off massively for the next 20 weeks. It's crazy.
It's just interesting because I looked at, I don't know, it's difficult to say this, but the guy who had Alexander, the guy who had the most points, didn't win FPL, but he had the most points. He made 56% of his transfers either before the game week finished or the day the game week finished. So days before deadline. And obviously it worked for him, but then the rest of the top 10 made only 20% in that time. And I must say, this data's from FPLanalyst.com, who's done a load of work on the top 10 and the Hall of Fame guys. But I found that really interesting. Like, he was a guy who really was aggressive and chased team value. And obviously it worked in terms of he had the most points, but other reasons why he didn't win FPL. But what do you think about that strategy? Because it is a controversial one.
Yeah, it is. I don't really. To me, the risk, I mean, we've talked about this on Scoutcast. I think you might even have been on that one a few years ago when we talked about the kind of trade-off between, the risk and reward. And it's why the kind of the price rises and falls does add something quite cool to the game, because it means you have to strategize. It means you have to either play aggressive and chase them, or you wait and get a bit more information, then make decisions. I've always tried to play a more patient, considered game rather than making quite rash decisions. I mean, sometimes it lends itself well. So Man United are a good example. Man United have a great run of games straight after game week 1. Got Palace, they've got a whole sea of green fixtures. It looks great. Because of United in general being the most popular team out there, you've got to think those players coming out for back of game week 1, their value is going to soar, surely.
Yeah. Well, they're Man
So I think
United as well,
it's
right?
Man United. So I think you have got to be aggressive with your transfers and act quickly on those, because if you wait a few days, especially if you've got no money in the bank, you're going to miss out quickly on being able to get in the players you want. So I think that going into game week 2 might be something that people look to do is getting on them quickly.
Yeah, I mean, you've got to help me with this because I do chase value and I do make early transfers, and you'll see when we talk about my mistakes and my transfers, you'll see I made one massive error with this where I made an early transfer and it cost me. It probably was a turning point in the season. It's as early as game week 3, and we'll talk about it in a minute. But I found it interesting. FPL analysts' data showed that with the top 10, 95% of their team value was earned in the first 18 game weeks. So basically, that's the business part of the season in terms of team value. So if you're gonna get your team value up, you've got to act early and you've got to stay with it to at least the halfway point. And
well, particularly because people drop off. So second half of the season, you've got less active players, less people making transfers, less value. Makes complete sense.
Yeah, it makes sense, and I definitely do go for that. And I'm the jury's still out with me. I'm still looking at whether I want to do that this season, because a lot of people I respect in the community have been saying no team value. Tom Freeman said it, FPL General again, don't go for it. And I want to take that advice, but I know it's one of my weak spots. Definitely is. But you don't have the same problem, you don't think?
I'm sort of 50-50. I definitely play more patiently. I tend to make my transfers towards the end of the week unless there's a reason not to. So if a player I want is going to go up and I can't get, that reminds me of the worst thing that happened to me.
You're going to talk Saka, aren't you?
Oh God, yeah. The worst thing that happened to me last season was I had a plan. I did everything right. I had a great plan. I wild carded. I was going to leave enough money in the bank to do Pookie to Vardy for his great run. And I left myself 0.1 extra in the bank in case of any price rise, even though Vardy was nowhere near going up. So I thought this is going to be fine. And then I had a few beers. I was in Poland. I had a few beers. I was like, oh, actually, Saka's playing. And he's 0.1 more than whoever it was, Marvelous in Canberra, I think it was. He might get a run in the team now. I'm never going to play him, but it might be useful to have him. So I got him, had exact money to do it. And then Vardy just went up in price like a couple of days later. He was on like 30% on the statistics thing. And it just ruined me because I now couldn't get him in the thing. So I ended up going for Wilson, who blanked like 3 weeks in a row. Vardy got like 40 points. Saka went out of the team again when Lacazette came back, as everyone predicted, because it was obvious. And then, then Henry got sacked. But yeah, again, that was a complete disaster.
The mistake you made there was playing your wild card when you knew you were going to Poland. Alcohol was going to be involved.
No, that's very true. That's a good lesson there. Yeah, but again, that is something around the team. If I'd had a bit more cash in the bank, then that wouldn't have been such a big issue. But I still think that waiting as long as you can, having the information that as much information as you can get. I mean, especially around COVID times as well. I think aggressively chasing team value this season in particular is really dangerous because you could take -4, bring in a load of players, see your value shoot up, and then the game gets called off because they've all tested positive for coronavirus. Like this is a really, really risky season to chase value, I think.
Yeah, or just one player. We've seen it with Troy recently, haven't we? So, exactly. I am going to have to be more cautious, but I'm going to have to rein it in because I do go after it, and it can work. There's no right or wrong really. You can get away with it, and Alexander definitely did in terms of points. But yeah, we'll see how it goes. We'll see when the season starts. You got fixtures breed form, but doesn't die with poor fixtures. So fixtures, you're a big advocate. Are you fixtures over form then?
Well, I'm both. This is kind of where I
is that allowed? That's cheating, surely.
Well, I think if I'm looking at a player to bring in, fixtures are really important. If you're asking me if I'm bringing a player in who's got good fixtures or great form but bad fixtures, I'm going to pick the player with good fixtures. Because fixtures breed. If you've got a player like Harry Kane, for example, who's got 5 blue games in a row, or a sea of green fixtures, or whatever colour you want to call it, you stand a good chance of getting some points. Whereas if you've got a player like Salah, for example, with 5 rough games, I probably would think twice about bringing that player in for those games. But I think it's different when you think about the players you've already got. and I think we see it so much, and I've seen it so much over the last few seasons, is that you have a player who's in absolutely incredible form. Got someone like Ings, like I remember Igalo a few seasons ago, I took him out. Grealish was in great form last season, and people took him out. They're in great form. Then they get a couple of bad fixtures, and people just take him out because they're trying to find a way to be a bit different, be a bit clever, and that kind of thing. But I'd say most of the time, particularly with strikers, if you've got a striker in form who's scoring for fun, I don't think there are many bad games in the Premiership for a striker to score in anymore. It might have been different 4 or 5 years ago, but unless they're playing Man City or Liverpool, I fancy a striker in form to score against anyone.
Yeah, I mean, the problem we've got this season as well is, though, that you've got all the heavy hitters in midfield. And, someone like Late Riser will be looking for a reason to swap one out for another. And if you're not going on fixtures, what are you going on? So we are going to be tempted to look at Salah. We're going to look Aubameyang to De Bruyne, right? Everyone's going to plan that transfer, or Aubameyang to Sterling. Everyone's going to plan that transfer.
Yeah.
And they're going to plan that transfer for two reasons. One, they want a Man City, but also they look at Aubameyang's fixtures. I think he's playing Liverpool game week 3. And they're going to go, oh, phew, that's okay, then I can get away with that. But why do we think that? Like you say, he can definitely score in those games. So it's going to be a real test.
I think that kind of point for me, because I really love Late Riser's strategy of switching around the heavy hitters and stuff. I think that the way he plays that is really clever. I think it's more for the budget players. Like when you've got your 6 or 7 million players who are doing a really good job in your team, and then you're taking them out to be a bit clever. Like the people who took out Grealish or Ings when they were in their great run of form, not only are you missing out on the points that they're getting because they're carrying scoring, you also have to nail the player you're getting in with them, which isn't always easy around that price bracket anyway, just because, say you're getting like Mitrovic and he's got a couple of good games. I mean, exactly the same thing happened with me and Callum Wilson. I think Wilson had Norwich and someone else. He had two home games, I think, like the best looking home games on paper. And it just didn't work out. I took Pookie out, got him in. It didn't. It's hard to nail those picks consistently. And when you've got someone like Grealish and Ings, I think they're the ones that you kind of want to keep on until they drop off a bit, lose their form. When they drop off the form and they have rough fixtures, that can be at the time. But when they're right in that sweet spot, I'm tempted to keep.
I think it depends on the pedigree of the player, though. I think as we play this game, we've got to know kind of like the signature of these players. Like you get to know, how Harry Kane acts as a player in terms of his returns. When you see him doing certain things on the pitch, it might be time to get off him. And Vardy a few seasons back was a player who scored against top sides because they sat back, whereas last season he was a flat track bully. So you start to learn how these players are, and then you can use that data to influence your decisions.
Look at
I guess.
Ings. I mean, who would have predicted that Ings would have gone on the run that he did last season?
But now we know that, right? We know Ings now can do that, whereas perhaps in the past we didn't know that about him. But I fell into a few traps with this as well. I mean, you talk about overthinking and thinking too much. I mean, that's your third point here, leading to bad decisions. It's a difficult one because arguably what we're doing right now, massively overthinking.
Yeah, I know. We're going to do it a lot. I think I mean, I find personally that the more I overthink things, the worse that I do. I think it's really interesting you saying the kind of almost the opposite for you. The more you read, the more you listen, then you end up making better decisions. I find that I think I'm too impressionable. I get swayed too easily by things and end up moving around. And I get sick of people calling people sheep and for doing certain things. I mean, I remember we bought in Antonio last season, and then he delivered. I was like, oh, just a sheep. He's doing it because everyone else is doing it. It's like, well, yeah, everyone was doing it because it was a good pick. He had great stats. He had a great fixture. He's playing up front. Like sometimes a sheep pick is a sensible pick. You can't just base it. You can't always just be different just for the sake of it. But one thing I'm going to do is I'm going to write down what my plans are at the start of the week, and then at the end of the week review what I'm thinking then, and just see if there is actual logic to why I'm changing my mind, or whether it's just because I've been swayed by something that I've read. Just a simple thing, but I think that kind of thing helps with that, kind of just contextualizes a bit more.
Yeah, FPL General said exactly the same thing, and I do think it's a great concept. Yeah, I mean, it works almost the opposite for me though, because like on a Saturday afternoon, hear someone scored, or I'll watch match of the day, and then I'll go, right, that's it. I've got to do that transfer. That player's got to be in my team. And then throughout the week, it's confirmation bias where you start looking at stats and you go, can I find something to just confirm? Yes, there we go. That stat confirms I've made the right call. So I think it's called anchoring, isn't it? Where you kind of make up your mind really early on, and then you stick with that and ignore everything you learn in the process along the way. And so I've got to be careful of this. But I'm going to do that same exercise to see whether that is in play for me, because, obviously you've got to be careful of emotion playing a part. On a Saturday afternoon or Sunday afternoon, when you've watched someone score a couple of goals, you write down, I've got to get that player. That is obviously stirred up by what you've just seen. And you've got to be careful as the week progresses that you don't just cling to that when there's other evidence, like, I don't know, there might be a midweek European game or something, which might introduce something new. So it's a two-way thing. It can work both ways. But I think that process of writing it down and then studying it as you go for the week is a really valuable one to do. So I'm going to give that a go.
Yeah. I mean, the thing, I'm also basing a lot of my decisions now on one thing with checking the scores is that when my phone goes and I see, someone scored, or like say Tottenham have scored, and I'm looking at my phone, I'm going, that's going to be Son.
It's going to be Kane. Yeah,
it's Kane. It's going to be Son. It's going to be one of them. Then I've got to start thinking, well, why am I so worried about it being? Why do I know that it's going to be Kane as soon as Tottenham score? I've got to tell you that player is worth even considering or thinking about, not just being stubborn and not getting them because I don't want them because everyone else has got them. But like, if that, that dread you get when you look at your phone.
I know. Every time Man City scored a goal last year, I was like, De Bruyne is going to get the goal or the assist. What's the chance he's not got anything out of that? Every time a goal went. I remember the 8-0 at Watford. I was out watching a non-league game, and I didn't have De Bruyne, and Sterling was benched for that game, so I knew I didn't have a player in the match. What was it, 5-0 after 20 minutes?
Yeah.
How was I feeling? I was like, my player's on the bench. It's 5-0 to City. It's just what damage has been done here. And it was catastrophic. It's a horrible feeling, isn't it? And that should have told me I need to get rid of Sterling because he's not going to be reliable, and I need to get somebody who is. Kevin De Bruyne, but I didn't learn. I didn't learn from that.
I think a lot of the time it just makes me even more stubborn.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. I'm like, well, I've had all this dread now, and when it finally pays off, when De Bruyne doesn't get any returns and Sterling scores, it's going to really feel good.
Oh yeah,
it never does because it's obvious that you should have made the move. Yeah.
Well, let's move on to my transfers because we talked a bit about them. Go on then, go for it. Look at the names there. Oh, dearie me.
This is great, by the way.
Game week 3, Cantwell for Lamella, Pukki for King, Martial for Perez, right? How does that look to you?
Yeah.
Be honest. Going.
Okay, let's review your season. It feels weird to be reviewing your season.
No,
but firstly, I don't understand why you started with Lamella anyway. But
yeah, good point. Yeah.
But fine. You went double Norwich attack, and this is the thing. This is the thing with hindsight, and this is where you do tread a difficult line because they did start the season incredibly strong. Like they looked really good in that Liverpool game. They looked great. Then they played Newcastle and Pukki scored a hat trick. Like I got Pukki in straight after those. I don't blame you for that. But yeah, and Cantwell could have been the for a while he was the 4.5 go-to best value pick. So they look better. I think that's fine. Martial, I think playing out of position.
Yeah, but I haven't told you all the Martial story.
Oh yeah, the story of Martial is
this is shocking, right? But just a background on this, I did a little analysis of the Elite 64 League that we're both in, and I made the second most transfers in the entire league, and I came third from bottom for the least points from transfers. So I only made 148 points in my transfers, and yet I made the second most of anybody in that league. And that league has a lot of good managers in it, fair enough, right? You made, I think, the most transfers, but you got 354 points from your transfers. So yours were far more effective than mine, right? 148 points. The teams below me, there's only 2 teams below me, I think they were more or less ghost ships. I don't even think they were playing properly. So it was absolute disaster for me in terms of transfers. So just to put this in perspective as well, game week 3, I was 35,000 in the world. I think that's my best ever start. 35,000 in the world. I was thinking, I've got a chance here this year. 35. Honestly, I was thinking this is a brilliant start. The minute I laid my hands on my team, the minute I started intervening from game week 3, it went belly up, massively belly up. And the first step was this: Martial for Perez. I mean, Martial, the background was that, yeah, he looked good. I made the transfer really early for a 4-point hit, and I didn't know he'd gone off with a knock. I mean, that's really careless. How did I not know this? He went off on 78 minutes, but I thought nothing of it. It wasn't obvious at the time that he was injured. But then I read the next day that basically United were playing down the injury. And I was like, what injury? Oh, no, I'm sure he'll be fine. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer came on and said, no, he should be fine. He's got a bit of a problem. It should be all right. So I kept him and obviously took a hit. I think he was out for 7 game weeks.
You didn't just keep him. I remember every week looking at your team being like, Mark appears to still have Martial.
Yeah, he missed. Here we go. He missed 6 matches from game week 4, and he played 6 minutes on his return back. So he effectively missed 7 matches, right? And all the way along, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer was kind of intimating that he'd be back soon, and I was buying it. And this is the confirmation bias thing. It's like, it's an astute call getting Martial this early. I've got in early before the crowd. I know what I'm doing. And then basically, I wouldn't accept the fact he was injured. I was like, no, it'll be all right. And Ole Gunnar Solskjaer was kind of like, saying all the right things. So he's teasing me. And I just fell for it, hook, line, and sinker. So I had him on my bench all the way along, right? So while Pookie and Cantwell were letting me down as well, and like going back to those transfers, Pookie got in 11 matches, game week 3 to game week 11, 2 goals, 2 assists, 33 points, nothing. If you go down the list as well, look at this Wesley. I got Wesley in for 2 matches. He got me 4 points, and he scored. I got rid of him, and he immediately scored in the next match. And what's worse is he scored against Arsenal, and that hurt my Maitland-Niles transfer. Look at this, Maitland-Niles for Van Dijk. In what world do you get Maitland-Niles for Van Dijk?
That's beautiful.
He got sent off. He got sent off in that game as well.
God, I mean, that is, I mean, FPL Raptor makes a really good point in the chat that out of all these transfers, I think I can count 5 defensive transfers. Yeah. So if you're talking about, potential like reward back from transfers, you don't expect defensive transfers to be the ones that generate the most points, which is why I'm trying to limit them last season. I mean, that's a lot of defensive transfers to make.
But not only that, look at these names: Cantwell, Pookie, Wesley, Mount, Maitland-Niles, Abraham, Tomori, Cancelo. How many of those have actually got? How many Premier League seasons have those names got behind them? Not many. Abraham got some experience with Swansea. The only one with any experience is Martial and Otamendi. And to be fair, Martial's an injury-prone player. Shouldn't have got him in. Otamendi, well, need I say more? I basically backed a load of players really early on that were not with any proven pedigree in the Premier League. Yeah. And while they showed flashes of form, and yes, Pookie did, Mount did, Abraham did, but I mean, Abraham, I had him until game week 19. I held on to him all that time, and he got me 4 goals and 3 assists, which doesn't sound disastrous, but it's not great. Mount, game week 4 to game week 10, 2 goals, 2 assists. They just didn't do it for me. And I was seduced by the flashes of form, and then just went, I've got to get them. And they weren't players that I should have trusted.
Daniel Bedford says Mark was definitely throwing darts at a list of names.
I know, yeah. The thing is, like, when I signed up for doing this, when I agreed to come in, that's wrong. I didn't sign up for it. I volunteered my services to come and do BlackBox.
Couldn't give it away.
No, and I said, right, first thing I do, I'm going to look back at last season. And I knew it was a bad one, right? But when you actually look at the cold light of day of the decisions you made, I was horrified. I was. And then it got worse. Game week 11 wildcard, I think it was the worst wildcard I've ever played. I mean, disastrous is the wrong word.
Lucky you were on the scout card. Imagine what Joe.
I know. I mean, God, yeah. I mean, he would slaughter me. On paper, it might not look so bad, right? But the results, I played it in 11. From game week 13 to 17, I only finished inside the top 4 million in a game week once. And even then, it was like just outside the million. So I had 4 out of 5 game weeks where I was outside the top 4 million, right? And that's 2 weeks after playing the wild card. Yeah. That is absolutely shocking. And then I kept Martial all through that as well. And by the time I sold Martial,
You kept Martial through the wild card?
Yeah, to game week 16.
So good. That's so good.
I know. And when I sold him, I was 1.1 million in the world, which was my lowest ever rank. So I'd gone from 35,000 in the world to 1.1 million.
Yeah.
And through that time, made those transfers that we went over there and
But
played
that's
the
the
wild
thing,
card.
like that kind of plummet, that isn't just you looking back with hindsight and being like, oh, I was really unlucky here. Like that there is, you can see where the mistakes have been made. And you can see from that list. I mean, looking down that list isn't just like, oh, I mean, some of them like Mount, Abraham, I can let you off with, because they were playing for an attacking Chelsea team. They were both cheap. They were both doing okay.
Yeah, but it's still hasty, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's what I mean. Abraham got like 3 double-digit returns in a row, didn't he? Did you have him? No, you probably just missed. You probably just missed that.
Yeah.
I guess it's about that consistency, isn't it? Can they keep doing it?
It is, and I shouldn't have trusted them. Like, Norwich's numbers were good, and Mount and Abraham's were. I mean, Abraham. What we know about Abraham now is the statistics favour him. They make him look like a great prospect, but actually we know his conversion rate isn't good enough. But I didn't. Again, I got so seduced by some parts of the data and I ignored other parts. And this is what I've got to get better. I've got to get better at analysing the data. I've got to look at how I use statistics, as I do. I am a big fan of them, but obviously I'm not using them right at times. I mean, let's look at the lessons that I come up with. Talking about right at the start, I question attacking bandwagons without pedigree. I've got to do that. I can't, if a player, say like, I mean, it's not going to happen, but say like Robson Kanu or Austin starts getting loads of goals, he's not a player with pedigree necessarily, but a bad example, but Austin is. But you know what I mean? A promoted player comes up and starts scoring a few goals and shows good numbers. I've got to be more inquisitive. I've got to question whether or not they're going to maintain it. Instead of that, what I try and do is get on early, because I think that's the aggressive move, and that's what I do. I think it's fine with proven players, but with new arrivals to the Premier League, promoted players, I can't do it. How do you feel about that?
I kind of agree, but I've had quite a lot of success over the years with the kind of like unproven players, because they're cheaper. They tend to be cheaper. Like I met Mitrovic a couple of seasons ago when he was at Fulham. He started really strongly. He got, I jumped off him at the right time as well, so that actually went quite well. I've had with Andre Gray, came up with Burnley. I've got him in. I do like a promoted striker.
I know, we're going to get to your team in a bit.
And I do quite like the promoted teams early on, because they're fired up, they're ready to go. It's only when they get halfway down the season, they're like, oh, we've lost every match now, we're broken and can't be bothered to play anymore. At the start, they tend to be quite fired up. So I think early on, they tend to be all right. I mean, the problem is that when you jump around like the mid-price players, that's where all your transfers go. And that's when you start losing out on things like what Late Rise is doing with targeting fixtures from the premium players, because you're messing around so much with all your mid-price ones.
I did, and like the defensive transfers, I mustn't do so many defensive transfers, because the attacking players are the ones that affect your team the most, and that's what I've got. I've got to get a steady defence and not do that. Also, I say here, don't trust early data on unproven players, because, as like I said earlier, we don't know what type of player they are. Like we know that someone like Abraham and Mitrovic, for example, will be statistically very strong. Like Mitrovic will be top of the shot chart because he's so many aerial chances. He might not be under Scott Parker, but he could be. But we can't trust that, because that's not, you can't say, oh, Mitrovic has had twice as many shots as Vardy, so therefore he's going to be a better player to get in. I mean, a player like Vardy, for example, we know Vardy and Aubameyang don't need strong stats to deliver. So we know a bit about them, right? We know that, but we don't know that about Werner. I mean, what's Werner going to be when he comes up? If he doesn't score for 2 or 3 game weeks, but he's had the most shots in the league, are we going to go, oh, I'm going to hold on to him because he's had the most shots in the league? And that's what you've got to be careful of, because until we know a bit more about a player and how the data works for them, how the eye test works for them, it's very, it's quite a risk to trust them.
It's tricky though, because I mean, like Antonio last season, I mean, all of the stats and the eye and everything pointed to him doing well. And, I think quite a few people got him in because it was a perfect blend of everything. He had the best fixture. He had great stats. He looked really good. He was out of position. He was like the perfect person to bring in. But so rare for someone to have all of those factors to be such a... to me, he was literally the perfect pick that week. Like, there was no way I was going to go with anyone different. But when you mention, like, you talk about someone like Verne or someone, and they haven't got great fixtures, or they haven't got the stats or something like that, it's a lot more cloudy. It's why the game's so difficult, and it's why it isn't just luck a lot of the time. A lot of the time it is, being intelligent with how you use the information you've got.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to try and go for as much known players as I can early on, and try not to be taken in by new players, no matter what they do in the numbers, or no matter how much they impress me in the eye test. I've got to be more careful because I'm too quick to them. So, as I say, don't trust form over fixtures for promoted teams, because Norwich looked amazing. They beat Man City, didn't they? And then they absolutely plummeted. The minute I got on Pookie and Cantwell, it just went into decline. And I held on to them thinking they'd come out of it, because I was looking at that early form and going, well, they played so well. And the thing is with Norwich, they did play well in most matches, but they just got turned over.
Yeah.
And they just lost the ability to score goals, didn't they?
Yeah.
And I just don't want to be taken in by that again. I'm not saying there is going to be a Norwich out there again, but I'm just going to be more wary of that, because I definitely fell for that hook, line, sinker. Martial here, the fourth point: avoid injury-prone players. I mean, I should know that, shouldn't I? Why do I need to be telling myself that? I mean, at this age in my FPL career, why do I need to remind myself about that? But Martial, it's like I'm considering him again, but it's early on in the season as well. That's the problem. Midway point, he was obviously fit again, and he was more robust. But early in the season, game week 3, I shouldn't have trusted him, and I did, and that's a mistake.
But the counterpoint to that is that I know Joe was massively avoiding Ings because he was like, oh, he's going to get injured again soon, and just didn't. And I mean, it's not quite the same example. But you remember a few seasons ago with Diego Costa when he was like one suspension away from a red?
Oh.
People weren't getting him. People weren't getting him in. Yeah. I think you can. I agree in principle with the injury-prone stuff, but also it can bite you if you stick with that so stubbornly that
I'll tell you a story about that.
It.
I was on the FBL social media channels and the FBL show, and every week I was saying, don't get Costa on, he's one booking from a ban, and he got another goal. Then the next week he got 2 more goals. Don't get Costa in. I know he scored, but he's one booking from a ban. I just kept saying it. I could have recorded it and just stuck it on. Oh, it was awful. Because I thought I was doing the right thing.
It was great.
I know. I was trying to tell people the right thing, I thought. But
I know.
I fell for it completely. And he's a clever player, isn't he, Costa? This is what we presumed, that he couldn't control himself, that he was almost an animal on the pitch. He was going to get booked, nothing he could do about it. But actually, he's a clever guy who knew he had to control himself, and he did. And
I think with that point, it's not so much about avoiding injury-prone players. It's about It's about avoiding players who might still be injured or are just coming back from injury.
Yeah.
Or that kind of thing. Maybe not keeping a player for 11 weeks.
Well, that's it. That's my next point. Don't hold injured players unless you're certain on the return date. Yeah. Because you hear and you read, you might have a player who's yellow flagged, and then and you think, well, he's going to play. And then you hear the manager and you think, yeah, that was, they said he should be okay. But I mean, I think when it's an injury-prone player as well, like Martial, you've got to question his recovery. Clearly, he's a player who doesn't recover from injury quickly. I should have known that. How did I not know that?
The trouble is, Solskjaer's the worst. He is so vague. It's like Eddie Howe levels of vagueness. Like a few knocks and niggles, a few this and that. He might be all right. Then he starts. He's a nightmare, really.
He's not our friend, is he? But I know that now, right? So I've got to go forward with that. I've said here, show more faith in defensive data for proven teams. The reason why I say that is going back to my wild card, and this is a tale of wild. I doubled Liverpool defence in the wild card, so I got Robertson and Trent, and then basically at the moment I did it, they went 6 games and they got 1 clean sheet in 6 games after that, and Trent actually missed that fixture, so I only got 1 clean sheet from that one. So I sold them, and I sold them in game week 16, and from that point on, they got 10 clean sheets in the next 11 matches. 10 clean sheets in the next 11 matches. So I did the right thing. I said, right, surely Liverpool's defence are going to improve. And when you remember last season, they started really bad. I think they had 2 clean sheets in the first 12 games.
I died the double for ages.
I knew that would turn, so I went with it in the wild card, and then I got cold feet. And even though I looked back, I went on Scout and I checked the data for this period. And even at game week 16, when I sold Robertson, Liverpool's defence was still the second best defence statistically. But I ignored that and thought, no, I've had enough. And then, of course, what happened? It all turned. And so what I'm saying here is I've got to show more faith in that. For defence like Liverpool's or Man City's, the strong defences, even though they're not keeping clean sheets, I've got to, if the data is saying, the expected data and the shots on target and the big chances conceded shows that they're still very, very high, and we're talking top 1 or 2, maybe third ranked, then stick with it. I'm going to try to, because I really regretted that last season. I could have made up some of the damage then if I'd have kept Robertson for those 11 matches. But yeah, and the final one is build a checklist to guide transfer decisions. I've never used checklists, but everything I've read over the last few months and everything I've heard from people like FPL General is it's all about lists. He has an A4 sheet on his wall, and I'm going to form a checklist. I've already got some stuff in work in progress that I'm going to build, and when we start making transfers, I'll bring it out and we'll go through it. But I think there's something in this. I mean, do you have criteria that you use when you make a transfer?
No, and I probably should.
Yeah,
I think I'm the same. I think it's tricky because I think, I think we talked about this a few weeks ago. One of the things I love about playing FPL is making kind of quite gut-based decisions, and I don't want to completely eliminate my enjoyment of the game. Like, if Sabas scored a couple of goals, I would have been over the moon, and it's something to talk about and it's something to laugh about and things. I don't want to lose that enjoyment with things, but at the same time, I want to do well. So it's about kind of marrying, and I think something like the checklist is perfect because it can just rein you in a little bit. It doesn't need to be like you only need to get a player in if he's got an XG of 0.74 and all this stuff. Like, it just needs to be, has he got an injury? Is he nailed on to play? Or is he getting touches in the penalty area and having shots? And does he normally do well with that kind of? So I don't know. There's, what I mean. There's like, you can build a list without needing to be super strict. And
for me, it's all about trust. Going back to that list, if you look at the names on that list, I mean, did I trust Wesley? Of course I didn't. What am I thinking? Yeah, I mean, even Mount and Abraham, I shouldn't have tried. I had enough data on Abraham from playing with Swansea that told me that perhaps the data was misleading, but I didn't, and I need something to just rein me in to make sure that I'm not making those mistakes. So I've got some points. I'll reveal them in a later show, and when we start making transfers, I'll wheel it out. And I think that's going to be a good thing for me. And you're right, though, right? We're walking a tightrope between Maverick and Dullard here. I don't want to suck the joy out of FPL, right? Because that's the problem. If we get into psychology and overthinking and lists and rules, suddenly this is the language of no joy whatsoever in this game. And I play this for the pleasure of it. And I'm a Maverick manager. I think you are as well. We don't want to become robots where we're just going through these checklists week in, week out, and we're making transfers in a robotic way. We need the heart there as well.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing is, like, we do all right. Like, I do okay. Your ranks are absolutely ridiculous. Like, you don't need a huge overhaul of the way you play the game. It just needs to be about refining it and about just thinking a bit differently about certain decisions. I mean, that transfer list is something.
I can't look back on another list like that, right? I can't do that again. But just going back to that point as well, it's fun. Me and Joe always used to clash about this, and Joe always used to annoy me. And he goes, "Well, I got the most points, so I'm making great fun. Thanks very much." And he's right. He's right. I mean, you do have fun by doing really well, and sometimes, but playing in a boring way is the right thing to do to get the most points. And if that's, if you can get fun from that, great. I struggle
it's
sometimes.
Picking your moment, isn't it? It's about picking the moment. It's just because you're getting in players other people have got doesn't mean you're boring. It means you're probably getting in quite sensible players, and then it's about doing something different when you've got the right opportunity to do so, and getting in a player people haven't got, and that's based on something that works. And I think we're both good at that on the whole. We've both got loads of examples of players we've brought in that people haven't really been thought of, but sometimes getting in the more sheep picks are completely right to do as well.
Well, let's see. Let's see if we can have good seasons, improve, and be a bit maverick along the way. Let's look at your team then, shall we, so far? Right.
Team for game week 1.
Yeah,
changed in a week.
I know, I can't believe that. I do not believe it. Well, I want you talked about not changing your defence a lot, right? So why Tierney then? Why? Because I've looked at Arsenal's fixtures and they're not brilliant, and Arteta's improved things, but 5.5 million for Tierney. that seemed he's a nice pick. He's quite a fashionable pick, if you like. But are you not worried about him?
Well, let me just sort of paint the scene a little bit.
Right.
I don't want to make any defensive transfers until the
Right.
wild card. So that is my key aim. So a pretty important thing with that is having a strong defense, right? I'm also going with another strategy, which is I don't want to own any centre backs over 5 million unless something crazy happens. I want to own attacking defenders, is basically all kind of budget defenders as well. So the reason I like Tierney is because Arteta has got them defending better. That is clear. Like they defend more as a unit. They were fantastic. They were fantastic towards the back end of last season. They've signed 2 new defenders, so he's clearly prioritising defence and getting them more solid. And he is a very, very attacking defender who I have been really impressed with since he signed and has good stats. It's as simple as that. So I think in the bigger games, Arteta is clever enough to work out how to defend well against the top teams.
So you're not put off by the fixtures because first 2 are good, but after that it downhill a bit.
Yeah, it drops down. I mean, this is the reason why I like him is because I think if you've got someone like him, even if they lose the clean sheet, he's still got a chance of grabbing you an assist or a goal. If I'm getting a 5.5 or a 6 billion centre back, I'm having to be very, very lucky to get any returns in those games. So it's not ideal with him not having the best fixtures, but I think in the long term, I think 5.5 million for an Arsenal defender, given Arteta's defensive record with them so far, is really good value.
Okay, so here's the scenario. Martinez starts 4.5 keeper and everyone's getting on him, but you don't want to double. So what do you do then?
I stick with Ramsdale because I think he's going to be the highest point scoring goalkeeper this season.
I mean, that's what would worry me because I would think I'm looking at Martinez and going, I don't think I can risk it. But if he starts and Arsenal start well, then people are going to jump on Martinez. But if I've got,
he's also a couple of rough games away from being dropped for Leno.
Could be, yeah, he could be. But it's about whether you feel it's worth taking that risk or not. But what I'm saying, by having Tierney, you won't be able to do well. You could, but I don't think you're going to double on them. So that for me would play on my mind a bit. But okay, Ramsdale, you're not going with cheaper. That's interesting, Ramsdale.
Sorry, just one more thing on Tierney is that I think people forget as well is that when you're playing 4 at the back like this, you've also got to compare these players to the midfield options that you can get. And there's a lot of people in the 5.5 bracket going for players like Armstrong, Saint-Maximin, Souček, all these guys. I just can't see them getting close to Tierney in terms of value for 5.5. I think if you're looking at it purely side by side in terms of points, I think he's going to outscore all of the 5.5 options comfortably. So I
get it, and you're not going to go Davis because you've got Doherty there as well.
Yeah.
So I can see that. It's just a Martinez thing that worries, or Gabriel's 5 million. So I just think there's cheaper options, and that Arsenal defence could come in. And I just worry that if you've got Tierney, and yes, he is quite, I wouldn't say he's flashy, but he's a player that promises attacking returns. You might be tempted to sit on him and wait, and then before you know it, you've missed Martinez, and he's at 4.8, and he is, he's in the team. Because obviously, if Martinez is going to have bad games, then Tierney's not going to get you points either, is he? Because he's letting in goals. So it's not exclusive to Martinez. So that's the only thing with Tierney. But it's brave, gutsy. Ramsdale, then why not cheap keeper? Everyone's going for a 4-5 and a 4. Yeah. Ramsdale was in my team about 2 weeks ago, but I've seen. I don't know. What do you think about that then?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't seen too many people with him, and I think what I love in a goalkeeper is you want a team who prioritises 1-0 wins and don't often score many more than 1 goals. Because it's why Pope has been such a great goalkeeper for years. And I remember you on a scout cost saying about why Pope is such a good goalkeeper, and it's because of all the sideway passes he does. It's because they play, so defensively that he ends up making loads of passes, puts his bonus points up, and all that. Pope is the player I'd want again this season, but I'm not paying 5.5 for a Burnley goalkeeper. I think Ryan at 4.5 is a great shout. I really do like him at 4.5. I can make a case for it. But I think Ramsdale makes so many saves. He made so many saves for Bournemouth. He kept them in, games which they should have lost 6, 7, 8-0. Like, he's a shot-stopping, extraordinaire, playing in such a solid defence in Sheffield United.
People on, I mean, I'm all for this Twitter thing. People on Twitter, which I would never find myself saying, but I am saying it now. People on Twitter are saying he's no Henderson, though, is he? And is that a thing? Do you believe that, or is that bluff?
Well, he isn't Henderson. I mean, he can't.
But is he of that? Is he in that same bracket quality-wise?
It's hard to say. I mean, it depends whether you think Sheffield United's whole system was based around Henderson. It was his organisation of defence completely key to the system. I mean, what I saw every player in that team with a job, knew what they were doing, so well drilled. It's similar to Burnley, and he's got kind of quite, not to be hard, quite average players playing in a system that fits them all specifically. So I think as a good manager, he's brought in a goalkeeper who he believes, and he's been there before. He knows the club. It's not a completely mad transfer. I think he fits exactly what Wilder wants from his goalkeeper to do. So I don't think Henderson leaving is going to be that bigger loss for them. I think Ramsdale's going to come in and do a job for him.
Okay, all right. Let's talk Pereira then, because we can't avoid that one. That's the one that stands out in it. That's the one you're most pleased about, isn't it? That's the one when the light goes out at night, you're like, oh, Pereira.
Oh, thank God! I just know. Pereira.
I know exactly how you're thinking there, and that's the danger, though, isn't it? Because he's exactly what I went for with Pookie. He's totally unproven in this division. All right, he looked nice in the Championship, but a lot of players can do that. Is he going to step up and do it? You obviously think he is, but what's your thoughts behind that? Then?
Well.
Come on, strap yourself in.
The problem is that I've gone pretty hard on 4 players. So I've got Salah, Aubameyang, Werner, and then I've got Ings for the first week, who's going to become Martial for the second week. So when you've got a lot of your budget tied up in those players, you need to think about the more budget options. And it's why I like 4 at the back, because I think Doherty, Tierney, Vinagre all have a role to play in that. I mean, I know Doherty's moved, but I think there's something on the scout where it's like if he gets 150 points, which wouldn't be that surprising, he'd be the best value out of all the budget midfielders and strikers in the game. Like, people just don't get close to that, whereas he, with his attacking displays. So I like that. But then you've got to think around your other players, and I'm thinking, okay, for 6 million, what can I really get? Like, it becomes more difficult. What you can get with Pereira and Mitrovic are these talisman players. I mean, Pereira, West Brom's squad. I'm looking at West Brom's squad and I'm thinking, A, how has this team got promoted? Sorry, West Brom fans. But B, how are they going to score goals in the Premier League? And the answer is Pereira. I mean, he created more chances for teammates than any player in 5 years in the Championship. That's a great stat.
It's impressive.
6 million.
Yeah, sure. But
everything's going to go through him. He's going to be that guy.
Who's on the end of it though? How Robson-Kanu and Austin.
Yeah,
I mentioned there. I mean, that's the minor flaw, I think, in the theory.
But there's if you look at him in singular terms, then yeah, okay, he's not a great player. I mean, I'd rather have probably anyone than that. But in the 6 million bracket, every team I see has Saint-Maximin in. Do you really think Saint-Maximin is that much of a better pick
but Armstrong, I do have time for. So why did you not consider him?
I've considered him, but I haven't seen enough of him to make me think that he's a cog in Southampton's play, whereas Pereira is the wheel, the driver, the tyres, the engine, everything. And that's the kind of player that I'm a bit more drawn to. Yeah,
no, I get it. I just think the danger is that he'll look good and he'll make some nice passes and set up some chances, but how Robson-Kanu will miss them, and you'll cling on to him, and there'll be other players that might pass you by. So that's the danger, because I do think Pereira's a lovely player and he's going to look good. He's definitely going to do on match of the day, he's going to pass the eye test, but is he going to deliver? That's the thing. We'll see.
But who was it who I noticed was creating chances for fun when they moved to the Premier League? Pascal Gross. And look what he did for me. That is true.
You've got
look
4.
What he did for me.
Yeah, I'll give you that. But
if I get half his points for Pereira,
wasn't he taking pens and free kicks though? I mean, Pereira doesn't free kick.
He's just like Pereira. He's just on everything. Yeah, he's literally tasked with driving that team forward.
Okay, we'll see. We'll see. We'll see if he's still there this time next week. So just going back a bit more as well to Doherty, you think he's going to do it as well? So you mentioned that Mitrovic, a lot. I mean, Mitrovic's ownership's crazy, isn't it?
I'm of that team. When I look at that team, I do genuinely think my weakest link there is Mitrovic. I like the idea of him. I like the idea that he's going to have to get their goals. I like the idea that he's on penalties and he's been in the Premier League before and done okay. What I don't like is Fulham.
I know. I'm with you.
I just can't see how they're going to stay up. I can't see how they're going to do well next year. And I don't mind Fulham. I've got nothing against them. I just think that squad is so thin.
He's made it. Lamela and Reed are a couple of good signings in the engine room, so to speak. But it's just the way Parker plays as well. If he's going to come up and play that same way, they try and like strangle matches. It's not going to work in the Premier League.
I know.
So I don't know what he's going to do.
I think there's some good 6.5 options. So I like Mopé, I like Wood, I like Antonio, for example. So if I could get an extra 0.5, it would be nice. But I think there are also options that I can go to with Mitrovic. I think if it was just Mitrovic on his own, it'd be worse. But you've got Che Adams at 5.5.
I know. I'm going to talk about him in a minute.
Yeah.
I mean, the thing is with me, I look at Mitrovic as well and go, Arsenal at home, you're back in Tierney. So already you've got that match. It's not nice, is it, to have that first live game?
Not in the first game week.
You've got defend. So that would put me off. It shouldn't do, but it does plays on my mind. So I don't know. Let's bring my team up and you can have a go back. I mean, this isn't final by any means, but there you go. Go on. There you go. So double ups there at the back with Robertson and Trent.
Yeah, I mean, my biggest issue with a lot of these teams is Souček is just in every team, and I see people with Souček and St. Maximan and this kind of thing, and I'm like, really? Like every week you're going to play? Like Souček has a great fixture game week 1, and then you're just never going to want to play him again.
Yeah, no, I get it. I mean, I've got Justin on the bench who arguably I could play instead because he's at West Brom. I know.
I mean, that isn't exactly. That doesn't fill me with confidence. And then you've got Che Adams as well, who you don't know really how he's going to perform. And then you've got Antonio with some of the worst fixtures coming up as well.
Yeah, I hear you. I mean, Antonio, I'm not worried about with bad fixtures. I think we know enough about him to know that he can do it against big teams. So I'm not worried about that. But Adams is a bit of a risk, but I think he showed enough last season, and I think he's going to start, and I think if he starts, it's fine. I think he'll do enough. But I had Mitrovic in there, obviously, and it's between Adams and Mitrovic. And at the moment, Adams has got it, but I can't lie, I've had Mitrovic in for a lot of the week as well. And you've got Ings as well, so I've doubled up on Southampton because I just fancy them at Palace. I think Southampton are so confident at the moment. They beat Swansea 7-1 in the pre-season game, and they were playing well at the end of last season. Palace were a wreck at the end of last season. We know. Look at the injuries Palace have got, and we're back in Man United in week 2 to thrash them. So why aren't we back in Southampton to thrash them? Because if anything, Southampton are in just as good a form as United. Yeah. So I've gone heavy on Ings and Adams. It's either that or I'm going to get Armstrong in midfield because I do think I want 2 Southampton attackers. But Souček is a strange one, isn't he? I mean, we probably know enough about him to trust what's going on there. He's going to start. We know he gets in the box. We know he's a handful. And I know his fixtures are bad, but the type of game that Souček brings, he can do it against big teams because he's a 6'4" giant who gets on the end of set pieces. So he can still get us something. And he is only 5 million. But yeah, I think you're one of the. I haven't seen many teams without him. So the fact you're not going for it.
To be honest, I'm struggling to understand why he's so highly owned. I know.
I've just told you.
Yeah, well, yeah, true. But the trouble is that you can't. I'm going to use the famous phrase. You can't run from him. Like,
oh no, God.
If you've got Souček in your team, you're locked in with him for a prolonged period. In a prolonged period of time, you don't want him because he's got such rough games.
Yeah, I get it. I get it if I was going to start him every week, and I guess that's the worry.
So if you don't start him, you're starting Justin
at the moment. Yeah. But you haven't. I mean, your first sub was Ferguson, who's injured, so you haven't even got a first sub. I don't start looking at my bench because you didn't have a bench. But
Ferguson's for the long game. To be fair, it could
well, that's a good thing given he's crocked. But yeah,
it's similar. It's a similar kind of thing with mine. I mean, obviously, when you look at Alexander-Arnold good, Robertson good, Salah good, Aubameyang good. Obviously, when you start getting to the dregs, you can poke holes and find problems with them. I mean, the fact is, you've got two 200-point defenders and Salah, Aubameyang and Son. So they're going to be your main source of points. As long as they deliver, all you need is a few drips from the others, and you're laughing.
Yeah, and I think
Son's a really nice pick.
I worry about that because
Really?
because he's out wide if Kane. But the thing is, I'm not convinced Kane's going to be fit. I mean, you know what he's like. If he takes 2 or 3 games to get going, doesn't he? And he's not had those pre-season friendlies. I presume he's going to be fully fit, but for Kane, match fit is a big problem. Yeah, I mean, the way I'm looking at it is, it's all about the Man United transfer in game week 2. I'm seeing a lot of teams, Holly in general, for example, have both got, they're both looking to get maybe even Fernandes on the bench. Now, I'm not brave enough to do that, but I've set this up so I can go Son to Rashford or Ings to Martial. But I want Martial early on again.
So have you got money in the bank with this team?
Yeah, I've got money in the bank. I've got 1.5
1.5
in the bank. So what's your Man United strategy then? Are you going to go Ings to Martial?
Ings to Martial, go me too. Yeah.
You got no doubts about Martial then?
I don't think so. And the more players United add around Martial, the happier I am. I mean, now they've got Van der Beek, great. That doesn't affect Martial. It just means he's got more. You know, if they keep adding in, if they add in Sancho, great. It just means more. It all just. They're not signing any direct competition to Martial. All they're doing is signing more competition around it. So,
I've got to think at the moment. It's between. I don't know. It's so difficult, isn't it? I think the choice of your Man United player could be crucial because there could be a difference between them. I mean, we're all presuming they're all going to be much of a muchness, but maybe not. And Bruno's got the numbers, but he's 10-5. Rashford is the romantic pick. He's the one that I might end up going with because he's Maverick, because he's 7% ownership. Martial's probably the sensible one, I would say. So I'm still torn, and I've set up another team. I just want to show you this because this team here is the next one. Where is it? Is that it? There we go. So this one here, I've got a really cheap front line. I've got 3 million in the bank here, or 3.5 in the bank. I can go Barnes to Fernandes, or any of those strikers to Martial. This team here enables me to get any United player in I want in game week 2. So I can give myself the first game week to make up my mind. 3 million.
3 million, right.
3.5 even. So and you laugh at that, but some people are starting with 10.5 on the bench.
I'm not. I'm only laughing.
I mean, this is why
idea, just what this season's start. The fact
I know,
but
I do find it preposterous that I would bank 3.5, but then I also find it preposterous that you would start with a 10.5 player on your bench. But good managers are doing just that.
Yeah.
So I might even go with this because I like Doherty at the back for the very reason you said you want to settle defence. Barnes, I think, is the one to watch for Leicester. I worry about Leicester's form without Maddison. And I think those 3 strikers, Nketiah, Antonio and Adams, could all bang on the first week. Obviously, one's going to go, or it'll be Barnes to Fernandes. So I'm tempted by this. I really am. But I don't know.
And I think, it allows you the option as well. I mean, you look at, if United don't make any more signings, Rashford at 7.5, that's an easy transfer.
Greenwood at 7.5.
Greenwood. Yeah, so Barnes to Greenwood even, and then you've got 3 more million to play with. Rashford as well. I mean, Rashford 9.5. No one's even really considering. I'm not seeing him talked about anywhere. It's all Fernandes and Martial, but I think Greenwood and Rashford do probably have quite big parts to play this year.
Yeah, I mean, this is it. I want time to consider my Man United choice. I don't want to put one on the bench now. I mean, like next week, one of them could have COVID for all we know. So I want to have 1 week's data and have the option to get any of them in, and that's what this team gives me.
Nketiah is interesting because I hadn't thought about him, and I remember messaging you the other day about after the Community Shield. You were like, "Oh, I think I might start with Nketiah," and I was like,
"Mind games, you see, mind games."
And then I know. Then I was thinking, actually, that could be an amazing shout. He's got 2 really good games. He looks first choice, but I'll just be too worried about Lacazette. I think maybe I just don't really understand football. I think Nketiah does well running around. I think he looks busy. I think he's a better player than me. I'm not going to lie, but I just can't see him being an elite player, and that's going to get like screen grabbed or whatever. And in 5 years when he wins,
you've set yourself right up there.
I know. But
what did Joe say? I haven't even heard of Trent Alexander-Arnold.
Yeah, I know. It's going to be one of those moments. But I don't know. Lacazette. I just think Lacazette is a top striker who's going to force his way back into that team at some point. personally, but then I'm not Arteta and I don't
Yeah,
train with him every day.
you could be
That's
right,
just my
but
own thoughts.
I think I'm going to get a couple of gains out of him. And also, it could be Nketiah to Martial straight away anyway. I've just got Nketiah at Fulham. And I do think Arsenal are going to score a couple at Fulham. So
I think for a 1 or 2 week punt, he's pretty bang on. But I guess you'd have to get rid of one of the other ones to get Martial, right? You can get rid of him because of how cheap he is.
I can. Nketiah is 6 million. I've got 3.5 on the bank. So I can go into Martial. I can go. That's what I mean. I can go any of those strikers to Martial, or I can go Barnes.
I prefer this team actually.
Well, there you go. Yeah, I know, and I like Doherty as well because I want Doherty to fire. I just don't trust Jose in the clean sheets yet. But in my mind, I'm thinking someone of quality in Aurier's positions would be good. That's what I'm thinking.
And he loves an attacking right back. Look at what he did with Ivanovic. I mean, Ivanovic should never have been the attacking force that he somehow made into. So did I. What a player.
Having him in your team, it was like Alonso, wasn't it? It's like you've got an extra forward. And, So that's what I want from Doherty.
Even Ashley Young, even when he was at United, and Ashley Young was bombing up and down. Like he does. I think he does look to that right side of the pitch for a lot. And he doesn't. I mean, I don't know if you've seen the Spurs documentary.
I have started watching it. I want to binge it.
He lays into Aurier at one point.
I tell you what, that effing and jeffing that Harry does in his team, so he's put me right off.
His team talks are an embarrassment. I hope for England, Southgate said, you're taking these, mate.
I know. But yeah, I want Doherty to do it. So I'm currently veering towards this. I really am.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely prefer that. And you don't have to, Souček comes out and you've got Vinagre, I don't know how you pronounce it.
Yeah, Vinagre, but plenty of money. I mean, if I go Barnes to Greenwood, I've got 3 million left.
Yeah, I think this option's better.
Well, we'll see. There's a long way to go. Unlike you, I'm not going to go a week. I'm probably not going to go 10 minutes after this show without changing my team. I don't know how you're doing that. I really don't. But we'll see. We'll see next week. I mean, next week we've got a lot to go over. I'm going to look at captains next week. I'm going to look at Sterling and De Bruyne, and we're going to talk about that. And we're going to look at our teams that are obviously very close to being final, I guess. We're going to look. I think we'll look more at Greyheads League as well, can't we? What else are we going to do next week?
Well, that sounds pretty good.
That sounds quite a lot, doesn't it?
Sounds pretty good to me.
One thing we said we were going to keep these to an hour. We've already done an hour and a half. There you go.
Yeah, I mean this is our first one. We're allowed a bit of an extra bit. I think we'll try and keep. We will try and keep them around an hour. I think
we took a while to warm up as well, but I feel fully. I could keep going for a couple of hours, but we better not do that. But we'll come back next week. We've got the first one done. There was no massive technical hitch, although when I watch this back, it's probably all come out really badly. But I hope not anyway. But I'm just glad to get the first one done, and it was a pleasure. Really good.
Yeah, really enjoyed it.
I'm excited. I'm excited about the season, and we're going to have fun with this hopefully, and I hope the listener does as well. So you'll get this out on iTunes and stuff, all that bit, will you?
Yeah, so tomorrow morning I will put onto all the various platforms. If you're listening to this now, then you've either got it on the platform already or you've watched it live.
That was a silly thing to say, wasn't it? Nonsense. All right. I guess with that, we'll say goodbye then. It's a goodbye from me.
And a good night from me.